So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Maurice Coleman. Maurice is the principal. There you are. Hello. Maurice is the principal of Coleman and Associates in Baltimore, Maryland. As a trainer, a coach, keynote speaker, he's helped many organizations improve their human processes and the use of technology, expanding their internal and external communication and broadening their focus on implementation of EDA activities. Maurice has facilitated experiences for organizations. The list was so long, but I'm kind of cutting it down a little bit to Lyrasis, ALA, Web Junction, Library 2.0, Urban Libraries Unite. I'm sure you've heard of all of these. And he's worked in libraries for over 20 years. Yeah. Welcome. Thank you, Maurice. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. Let me do this. Let me share my screen. And just to let you all know, I'm currently in Baltimore, Maryland, as you'll see by one of the slides that I have up. I am originally I was born, bred, raised, battered and deep fried in good old Brooklyn, New York. So I've spent my time in Syracuse, Central New York. I know where it is, more importantly on a map, and I've been there through a few times. I also had experience working with the New York Public Interest Research Group before coming to Maryland, and with a group called Citizens Committee for New York City, doing all sorts of community organizing, etc. I turned off my video during this whole thing simply because it's really about you and experiencing the slides, etc. So with that, remember, this journey of security and privacy is a journey of 1,000 steps. The idea is to get you started, get you knowing what to look for. It is not comprehensive. We don't have time for comprehensive. We have time for a good introduction, but still an introduction. In addition to the slides, you will receive it's now 8 pages of links, etc. Many of the things I talk about during the presentation, and deeper dives into a lot of resources for cybersecurity and privacy. All right, so that's me. If you want to take a second, there's various QR codes to get in touch with me. If you have a phone, you can take a snap of it now. There's also the link tree, which gets me to a link to all of my stuff, including how to contact me on my website. All images are used with permission via Creative Commons. This is my contact information. There'll be a slide similar to this at the very end of the workshop. And I want to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Massawomack, Susquehannock, Lenape, Choptank, Nataqua, Siouan, Pocomoke, and Piscataway First Nations for where I am teaching today. And I think that's very just important in general for me, because we understand our history and the history of the land that we sit, learn, think, and really have to contemplate what that means for, at least for our services to the community as libraries. All right, so really quickly in ye old chat feature, I want you to say, why are you here today? Very briefly, this is the simple one-word thing. Why are you here today? You can't just say for the food because there's no food, but you're probably here for information, you want to learn something, just so I can get an idea of why you're here today. So please answer some of that in chat just for a second. Awesome, to learn. Well, yep, you will, don't worry. To get information, okay, curiosity info, awesome. I like all that, Find out if there are any loopholes in our current policies. Okay. All right, I hope I can help you with that, Janet. I have lots of suggestions. I have more suggestions, but some of those offline. Learn the latest security issues, okay? Security ideas, awesome. Worried about privacy and to get up-to-date information. Patron safety, confidentiality, address patron concerns. All right, if there is something that I don't cover explicitly during this, feel free to contact me offline and I can find out some resources for you, etc. We can have a further conversation about some stuff. Data security, always good. Excellent. All right, let us rock and roll here. The next question I have for you is, Briefly, what is your role at the library? Are you in charge of your data security and privacy? Are you in charge of things? Hackers and people phishing, calling the library, pretending to be vendors. Yeah, those are always good. I don't have a thing specifically about phishing in here, but really it's actually I do have something that it's essentially be a skeptic. So that usually prevents a lot of phishing. Technology librarian, public facing, children's services, IT manager, okay. ILS administrator, outreach patron record manager, user privacy education, charge of security team, okay. All right, a lot of different roles here. Thank you, friends, very much for that content. So let's do this. The first thing right now is that we are at the top of that iceberg. Cybersecurity and privacy are very large, very ginormous, very big, 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 big. Did I mention big topics? We are not going to possibly cover everything. This really is an introductory presentation. But what I'd like for you to do is to not panic and also enter with caution. Okay, don't panic. There's lots of resources there, lots of things you're going to have. We're going to talk about a lot of different things today. There'll be slides, there'll be notes. You can contact me. So don't feel you have to write every single thing down because there's going to be a lot of it. Okay. All right, I'm going to make an assumption that you have some cursory knowledge, except for our friend who's the IT manager, cursory knowledge of security and privacy. I know that as folks who work in a library, you all are concerned about security and privacy. That's good. That's a great place to start. So I want to make sure you know that. That's my assumption. Also, remember, for any of these things, one size does not fit all. Brief story, that was a toilet in a B&B in Denver one year. As you see, that's me, and I am not fitting in that toilet. So one size does not fit all. Also, do not look for a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet answer to things. Nothing is a silver bullet, very simple thing. There are simple things you can do, but overall, this is a complex thing that you should always be thinking about in terms of your security and privacy policy. Also, it's going to not be easy. So people think it looks like, bam, you go straight arrow. Everyone knows the arrow, you go from A to J to R, back to C, wait, A plus, down to RJ to letter 20, and then up to the letter Z for success. So success is really a lot of steps that go forward, backwards, left, right, etc., and sometimes go completely afield. So if you remember nothing, I want you to think about this phrase. I want you to practice preventative, proactive paranoia. If you are proactive and paranoid, your solutions will be cheaper than trying to fix something on the fly that you were not prepared for. Preventing is easier than repairing, okay? Preventative, proactive paranoia is smart. Again, cheaper than fixing something on the fly you're not prepared for. It's also easy-ish. We all kind of think about it, but what it does, it takes advantage of that by adding some proactive actions and preventative measures. A few simple steps will be all that you need to keep your library's data safe-ish and your privacy private-ish. It's also good stewardship. You are responsible for the information you collect from your customers and ultimately what information your services collect from your customers. Knowing what your vendors collect, how they use it, how they protect it, means better stewardship of your users' data and information. And if they're not willing to tell you their security practices, how they have a double secret blind probation, how their people access things, etc., you may need to find a different vendor for what you're doing. They should really be very transparent with it, especially because they have access to people's information. It's also thrifty. Again, it is cheaper to plan and prepare for a catastrophe than to scramble in the moment. As I'm sure a lot of people discovered during COVID, it's really easier to plan and prepare for the catastrophe than to try to deal with it in the moment. Also, preventative proactive paranoia is knowing your policy and procedures for stressful situations. What do individuals in your library, no matter what size your library, you could be you and a part-timer, you're the full-timer, they're the part-timer. You could be from a large system, somewhere in between, a full county system, a state library, it doesn't matter what type of organization you are. Does every single person that has access to some sort of digital device know what to do in stressful situations? What happens if they click a link and they think it's malware? Do they know what to do? What do you want them to do? They should know this. What's your procedure? If you're in IT, what's your procedure? Do you have the old bleep thing happening? Do you have a backup data plan? More importantly, do you have backup systems in place? Do you have the ability to place an order for a new server right away, get it, and be able to copy your backup of your old server information from yesterday to it, eliminating downtime? What if your library is held hostage by ransomware? Are you prepared for that? So here's a little bit of money, $9.7 million. This is the amount of money the January 2021 ransomware attack cost Baltimore County Public Schools as of November of 21. They expected to get about $2 million back from insurance, so they lost about $9.7 million. That's just the actual cash layout, not the experience of my granddaughter was one of the students that got impacted. They shut down. They got a ransomware attack over the Christmas holiday. They had just essentially started, the new school year. Teachers were ready to rock and roll, et cetera. January 2021. They had shifted during COVID. They had all their stuff for the year because everyone was going to school virtually, and it was all locked up because of a ransomware attack. The teachers had to take the 2 weeks that they gave the students off unexpectedly after Christmas break to recreate their entire spring semester of stuff, plus figure out all the stuff from the previous semester so they could do grades. I want you to wrap your head around that's a lot of students, the big county, a lot of students. Imagine if that happened in your county where your children or grandchildren go to school. So, privacy and security defined for libraries. Security is the physical and digital protection of your stuff, data, access, computer, networks, and things. Okay, that's security. Security is not just digital security, it's also physical security. It's making sure that, as I'll talk to you about later, if your staff computers are there at a place the public can easily get to, like every time you walk away, do your staff members lock the computers so the public doesn't have unfettered access to your network? Yes or no? Are your staff areas secure, or where your servers are secure? Privacy is physical and digital control of access to your stuff, your personal data, your web history, your images, and personal information. All right, that's physical and digital control of the access to your stuff. You can use the your of your library, yourself, your family, however you want to group the you. I think of them as fraternal twins that protect your users and your library. All right, this is a good moment to stop. Are there any questions out there, Anna?
So far, nothing, Maurice, but let's hang in there a minute.
All right. Is
Feel
everyone
free,
still,
feel free to
with
go
me?
to the Q&A, please.
All right, so we'll go on briefly. This is
Okay.
another quick question for the audience, as it were. Why do you think privacy is so hard and security is so disjointed? So this is a one-word answer. Why do you think privacy is hard and security is so disjointed? So really quickly and briefly, everyone who's here, just give me a quick one-word answer. Why do you think that is? All right, no coordination, we have complexity, interesting people. I can feel that one, Daphne. It's a lot. It's a lot. There's so many different things you have to kind of worry about. A lack of trust, all right. A lack of trust. Elena, I would talk, if we had time, I'd talk about the lack of trust. Is it lack of trust in the system? Lack of trust in your customers? Who are you lacking trust in? And who's lacking the trust? Not having a technical background, okay, understood. Almost everything is available on the internet, yes and no. Physical versus informational data, interesting question there, Mark. I think I know what you mean by that, but I feel you. All right, we'll give people another second to answer. All right, thank you very much, folks, for your feedback. So let us remember, this is a very basic thing. So we're going to peel back some stuff here. Okay, let's pull back the curtain on the internet. All right, let's pull back the curtain. We're going to pull back the curtain. The internet is it's 1,000 points of light connected by various things, various computers and switches and all sorts of mishabas that we're not talking about today. But let's just say there's a lot of layers out there and a lot of eyeballs, electronic fingers that touch every single bit of data that flies across the internet. So, in other words, if it's on the internet, it is not private. Period, full stop. You can try to make it private. You'll likely make some of it private. You could, but if it's digital, it's shareable, it's findable, it's nextable. So remember, if it's on the internet, it is not private. That's rule number one. Rule number two, internet privacy is an old concept. Now, privacy of your information, not an old concept. Holding on to your information, not an old concept. But internet privacy is an old concept because there are cameras everywhere. Thanks to the Patriot Act in 0102, essentially they're just cameras everywhere. Assume someone's filming something somewhere at some time with you in it, with your public data. There is so much stuff out there about you as the individual, you as your library, you as your family out there because people share information that's public. There's public information such as deeds, etc. All that stuff is accessible by web crawlers. So privacy is an old concept. People will know your address. They probably will know your phone number. I know how much you bought your house for, your car, etc. Also, just assume the government is listening. Yep. That is correct. That they can film you without your knowledge at any time. And that people took pictures before with small cameras, etc. before. It's just way more democratized technology. Everyone has one of those things in their hand. And assume the government is listening. That's because the government owns the highway. The internet literally is the government's informational superhighway. They created it. Look up DARPA. It's the history of the internet. There are lots of things out there, but it is the government's way. Originally, internet was a way of conveying information from point A to point B without some sort of direct access in case the nuclear war took out an information hub. So it's supposed to be essentially a hubless way of sharing data and information. So some key layers of the internet, meaning this is a 17,000 layer cake we're talking about here. There's the content, email, HTML, hypertext markup language, the language of the web pages, search engines, how information is indexed by web crawlers, independent bots, and accessed by things such as Google or Bing or whatever search, or DuckDuckGo, which is a fantastic search engine. You have web browsers. All the way back to 1986, they were around. Mosaic started, that led to Firefox, which was copied by Internet Explorer, etc. The World Wide Web itself, Tim Berners-Lee invented Hypertext Transfer Protocol in order to better share information amongst different types of computer users. There's the transfer protocol, internet protocol, that makes the internet the way the computers can talk to each other and figure out, okay, I'm going to this particular place at this particular time. Networking allows people to get on. The internet is just a very large network, especially if you see the cloud. And general computing. Computers have been around for a while. Everyone has one. As Janet mentioned, a smartphone. Smartphone is just a very power-packed miniature computer that can do so many different things. So these are all different layers of the internet. That's a lot of stuff. It means a lot of stuff has to happen in order for information to get point A to point B. For example, you go to this particular website, you have a request. Well, that's your request at that server, but there's also a whole bunch of other people who are really interested in you. That contract, you should have first-party server, especially if it's a commercial server, and says, let me put a little tracking cookie on you. Let me put another tracking cookie on you, so I can track where you came from, where you went, etc. And that's all tied to your requested content. Many times you go to a site such as, say, CNN, you look at the bottom of your browser, you see all these different web addresses fly by really quickly. That's because those are the things that are sharing tracking information from your browser to them, to CNN, to all sorts of parties. That's because nothing is free on the internet. It may not cost you money necessarily, but it is not free. The currency of the internet, TikTok, Facebook, the artist formerly known as Twitter, all these social media platforms and other places, Pinterest, etc., the currency of those things is you. Your eyeballs are the currency. Your clicks are the currency. That equals money. Your browsing history, your app usage, your products, your purchases, your geolocation data, your clicks, impressions, taps, and movements goes into this large, sprawling behavioral profiles, which can reveal political information, religious beliefs, sexual identity and activity, race and ethnicity, education level, income bracket, purchasing habits, physical and mental health, all sorts of things. Which is why sometimes you're talking about something randomly. If you have one of the listening devices, Alexa or Google Nest, etc., and you just happen to mention something, you happen to mention, I'm really thinking about buying a new Lexus. The next thing you know, about an hour or two, you will see ads for Lexus dealers near you on your phone in an app you didn't have open. That's because all these things are there to try to sell you stuff. There really is a high cost privacy for a free website. There are trackers everywhere for everything. So this is a group called Sparta A. They agreed to one cookie from one place. These are the trackers they found. When you say, oh, why don't you log in with Facebook? That's so Facebook can figure out where you're going after you leave Facebook. What did you click when you left Facebook? Could Facebook possibly make money from you clicking that thing there in Facebook as opposed to them? Or Twitter, same thing. Or Discus, for example, these are all the different piggyback trackers. For Adobe, Google, Oracle, you've heard of it. Some of these things are some random companies that collect data and information about you and your browsing. Now, thanks to many different states like California, et cetera, that you see this thing, make sure you accept all those cookies. Sure, I can reject all the unnecessary cookies, but it doesn't stop the company from saying all those tracking cookies are still necessary cookies. So your mileage may vary, but that's just to be an informed consumer. There are three big companies that aggregate a lot of this data from all these people that collect data from everywhere, right? They are Axicom, Epsilon, and Equifax. Equifax we also know because those are one of the big three credit brokers. Now, where'd you get credit score? Equifax, okay, is one of the three big three credit scores. But these are data aggregation companies. What they do is they take data from all those things, as I talked about in the previous slide, with piggyback trackers, et cetera, scrape public data, scrape everything. And then what they do is they put all that together, all that information, your loans, various government records, things from loyalty programs. Again, nothing is free. Online profiles, things from mobile apps, employment registries, and your purchase history at, say, Amazon or any other online retailer. They put all that stuff together into a profile about you. It's all about you. It's all about collecting all of your data, all this random stuff in order to target you with ads that will lead you to click and to purchase things. So Axicom, for example, provides up to 3,000 attributes and scores for people. They have all these different things. They'll have your name changes. How many purchases do you make with a Visa credit card in the last 24 months? Maybe they took all these things to these different places and say, wow, maybe this couple is about to have a child. I'm going to start sending them things for child cribs, baby monitors, subscription services for diapers, formula, all these. Hey, you know what? Why don't you send a Target? You can send them a coupon for a car seat. Looks like they need a new car. Wait a minute, car seat. What? They already have 2 kids? Maybe they're in the mood to expand into a minivan or to a larger SUV. Let's send some stuff to them. This is how those ads are targeted to you. These data brokers sell these profiles of people, and sometimes these profiles are wrong, to advertisers. In the notes, I'm going to hand out the links sheet. Is A, the information about those 3 places. B, there are various ways to opt out of these. You can pay a service, or you can go to each service and do it individually. There's some information in the sheet I'm going to send out to you, that Anna's going to send out to you, that tells you how to do that. It's better to be an informed consumer. Just understand and help your customers understand that your eyeballs are where the cash are. Okay. So really, this is kind of a joke, but they said that finger scans will only be stored in a phone. Ha ha ha. Apple is saving them. Just assume Apple or Google is saving them. They're saving them somewhere for some purpose. Just they're saving them. If you look at the 5,000 page Apple TOS, I bet you $1 to a donut that it says, so we have the ability to save all the information we collect about you on the phone, up to and not including and including fingerprints, your heart rate, etc. When you're looking at a particular website, does your heart rate go up? Hey, wait a minute, they might be excited about that. Let's sell them that product. All right. Questions. Are medical records easily accessed by these companies? All the doctors have computer records now. It depends, Kathy. There's some things that are anonymized by drug companies, etc. It depends. Sometimes to get into a website. Now, in theory, discuss your specific stuff. Yeah, there's HIPAA involved, but they can anonymize the data. And if you click on something, say you click, I'm diabetic. I click on, say, some sort of new diabetes medicine, and it's a cookie, and I start doing that a lot, they're going to assume I'm diabetic or know someone is diabetic. Now, that's the legal way. Now, are there hackers out there who will scrape information for ill-gotten gain and purposes? Yes. But that's part of what asking if, are your medical records easily accessed? Unfortunately, we are at the hands of, we don't really have a choice. Our doctor uses a particular thing. Doc, how well do you keep my records? What do you do for security? How many people have access to my records? Knowing that is a good consumer. Is incognito mode really incognito? Yes and no, Daphne. I will talk about that in a little bit, but actually I'll talk about it now. Incognito means, or it's private browsing or whatever. What it means is it doesn't allow the websites usually to track where you came from, etc. There's different levels of that, but it kind of keeps you semi-hidden. What it doesn't keep hidden is your particular network administrator knowing where you're going. They see the traffic, they see where the traffic's going. So you may be invisible to your websites, but whoever runs your network is going to know where you went. Unless you use a virtual private network and a browser like Tor, which bounces you all over the goddess's creation to get you to a place. So incognito is pretty incognito. Does that answer your question, Daphne? And Kathy, did I answer your question? All right. Overtrust, Susan, I'm going to ask, what is overtrusting the other side? What does that mean? I don't quite understand it.
That came when you were asking about, what people thought was privacy, the problem with privacy or security.
Yep, overtrusting people. Yep. Be a skeptic. Be a skeptic. You'll see in a slide that I say that often. Be a skeptic.
Maurice, I have a question myself.
Sure,
When you showed that path of the internet going to various things, and at the bottom of your slide,
Mhm.
you showed the cookie path, right?
Yes,
When you go to a website and you say, do not accept cookies, do not enable cookies,
right.
isn't it already pinged that you're there anyway?
Sure-ish. It means that site isn't leaving something, but maybe the site you came from will say, hey, you went to this site. Also, if you notice, they say, what are the necessary cookies? You start diving into this. And so what are the necessary cookies? Some websites are slick and say the necessary cookies are the ones to track you because we want to make sure your user experience is paramount to you and is bespoke. So therefore, we have to keep all this private information about you on your computer in a small tracking cookie that lets us know the next time you come back, we'll be able to give you your bespoke service level you're expecting and going to the things that you did. So, sort of. Anyone out there who maybe has more knowledge about this than I do? That's my experience with it, is that sure-ish, you reject them, but they could also say, what are the necessary cookies?
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what does that mean for libraries? I'm sorry, were there any other questions before I go on?
Right now, I think we're good. Thank
Awesome.
you.
All right, first, let's talk about how to protect data. All right, remember the mantra. You're going to hear this several times. Practice, preventative, proactive paranoia. Two big things. Remember, the return on investment or anything you do to prevent a cybersecurity incident will cost way less than the cost of your recovery. That's the lost staff time, lost business time, repairing your image, restoring trust, all those things. What you do to prevent it is going to cost way less than the cost of recovery. Okay, that's big thing one. Big thing two is that libraries typically are more vulnerable to digital and physical attacks because of older equipment, running outdated software, over poorly protected networks, and because libraries are really, I'm going to use the word thrifty. There's a 5-letter word that I really mean, but really it's thrifty as opposed to cheap. And because cybercrime has low startup costs. You can get someone to crack a site for $250 and hold it hostage for $10,000. You make a lot of money doing that. Or the $66 ransomware kit. You can hold a library up for $1,000, you make cash. And guess what? You can use that kit over and over and over and over and over and over again. So it's cheap. Spear phishing. Someone asked about various phishing scams. Spear phishing, underfunded. Yes, Janet, I get that. But part of what you should try to do is really convince whoever holds the purse strings that investing in this is good business sense. It's an investment. Think of it as a capital investment. It's a capital investment to keep your joint open. If your stuff is old, outdated, etc., it's going to leave you way more vulnerable to a cyber attack. And what happens if your library shuts down for a little while, as we'll just talk about in a minute. So let's talk about a couple of incidents that happened in the 2011s. Boston Public Library had a system-wide technological outage because of a cyber attack. At Boston Public Library, big library. Northampton Library in Pennsylvania, cyber attack closed the library for several days. In Anne Arundel County, which is about 40 minutes south of me, 600 staff and public library computers were compromised by a ransomware attack. They got hit with the Emotet banking Trojan, and the malware was distributed by spam emails to library computers in 15 minutes. It got into everyone. The full recovery from the attack took 3 years, 3 full years by the time they were fully up and running, back to a similar level of service internally and externally from that attack. 3 years. Or Baltimore County Schools. Remember I told you that 9.7 million in counting. I was not kidding. They had to redo everything. It shut down for an extra 2 weeks. What does that do to a family who's like, well, I got to find something for my kid to do for 2 weeks while the school is shut down? That's a lot of children. Okay, so it's cheaper to prevent it as much as you can. Remember, there's no silver bullet, no size fits everyone, but it is cheaper to prevent it than to try to fix it. All right, let's talk about some best practices. If you aren't IT, make friends with your IT. If you're IT, make friends with your staff. The first step in prevention is alliance. So yes, likely your IT will want to, and this is true of every IT person, want to overprotect and limit access. Library folks, we want everyone to be able to access everything. Somewhat unfettered, but pretty much access everything. You have to work together to figure out what's a workable balance between protecting and locking down everything and completely unprotected access, unfettered access, so your staff and customers can use your computers effectively and efficiently. If your library has an IT department or you have a city, county IT department that you have to work with them to enact security measures for your data, security measures for your customers, security measures for your staff. They should already be doing this. If they don't, poke them. If they balk, do a Google search for library ransomware and be afraid. And thank you, Kevin, for putting that in there. So a little back channel thing, I am going to copy that and I'm going to add it to my list of stuff. Thank you, Kevin. That's awesome. I love, that's true participatory stuff. I love that. Now I could add it to my stuff. And you see, I have some older things, but you know, the beat goes on. You know, the beat goes on. So for both IT and non-IT library folks, make friends with other IT, local schools, higher education institutions, regional consortia, and state libraries usually have an IT department or person. They have ideas you can use to protect your folks, and you'll have things that maybe they haven't thought to do with their computers, networking users. Always better to make friends and talk about things. As I mentioned before, check your vendors. Ask them, what are your security policies? Now, this should have been part of your RFP process before selecting a vendor for things, but you know, you weren't there when it happened, or you didn't have control of it. You can now ask them, so what do you do with the library and customers' private information? How do you protect what you gather? What do? Do you have ulster layers? You have people who try to poke you and try to break into you so you can find your vulnerabilities because everyone has them. Libraries share a lot of data with vendors. What information do they capture and keep? What do they do with it? Each vendor should be able to answer these questions without acting squirrely. If they act squirrely, time to move on. Back it up in many places. Have physical and digital backups that are consistently and constantly generated. Maybe do a daily incremental and a 3-day full backup. Keep a full backup offsite digitally and physically. Remember, we're talking about physical security of stuff. Places have unfortunate natural events happen that suddenly that particular place is gone. Where's your backup? So keep it offsite. An ounce of paranoia, remember, proactive paranoia, will save you time in case you do get compromised. Remember to test and patch your network constantly. As for patching, your standing rule should be that everyone should patch at the end of the day if they say they got an update. For your public computers, make sure the OS and app programs are updated on a regular schedule. Also schedule regular updates and scans for your network and every device you have on your network. Your ID, your entry, your access points, your various routers and things that bip and bing, all those things should always be updated. Make sure you have the latest firmware on everything. And with that, they're good friends, is perpetual virus and malware scanning. Always, 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 always make sure that you are doing a virus scan of everything that comes in or out of your system. Computers have automatic virus scans, force out updates. Some people do virus scans every week, month, or year, not a year, but every week or a month. Make sure it may be automatic on your computer. Even Windows Defender, if you just have Windows Defender, you have Windows machines. Windows Defender is better than nothing. Okay. Also do malware scanning. Make sure you don't have any malware on your computer or on your servers. Do server testing, etc. Continually test. Again, back to Apple, and it's they introduced fingerprint scanning. That means the world's largest named fingerprint database is now going to be available without even trying much. That's because with the cybersecurity bell curve, truly basic security hygiene, that's what this is. Basic security hygiene is going to protect against 98% of your attacks. That's why if you're preventing 98% of attacks, that 2% you can better deal with because you've thought about the other 98%. So do what you can, okay? You got to have outliers. Do what you can to protect your data, right? Are there any questions? And again, thanks, Kevin, for pointing that out.
In
Yes,
the chat, Maurice, Janet mentioned underfunding.
Yep.
Okay, as one of the biggest factors, and obviously, libraries are not funded very well.
Nope.
So my question to you, and maybe she can piggyback on this in the chat, is what can you do given the fact that you have no funding? What is the bare minimum? I don't know if you're going to address this or whether you'd like to talk about the bare minimum and what would be your argument for
$9.7 million. That's my argument. What cost Baltimore County Public Schools, or as Kevin put in, these are all various cyber attacks. These things cost you. You don't think I'm vulnerable, but you're vulnerable. You're there. Your information's out there. You're vulnerable. What the basic stuff should be is thinking about, if you were a bad actor, how would I get into your system, and putting some protections up against that. So if I'm going to talk about access, right? Some basic things about access, or your customers, or your staff habits. So doing those things, those are somewhat free, okay? I can talk longer after 4 o'clock about being underfunded. I mean, that might mean shifting your budgeting priorities. You have some money for technology. Maybe one year you don't upgrade your computers and you upgrade all of your security stuff that'll make sure that you can keep using those computers, or upgrade to the latest of this, or get something like a program that I'm going to talk about, or a deep freeze or smart shield for your public computers, or do things like that. What do they do? What do you do if they get in and threaten to publish your files? I mean, that's part of being the preventative. I can't answer that question for you. That is something that you have to think about as an organization. Some would say, go ahead, publish our internal files. We're trying to do the job of the library. No one is importing illicit drugs to the library. So what are you going to do? Oh, well, this is what you think about that person. They're private internal things. So now, and that's part of why you have to make sure that your stuff is as protected as possible. That is what they threaten to publish your files. I have my own personal opinion, but that is something you have to work out with your administration, with whoever is your county, your risk management, all those people. That's part of why you make friends with other IT, so you know what are the other things people in your area are also doing with such a situation. If they ain't thinking about it, maybe you can be like the library usually is, the thought leader, and say, let's start thinking about this because this could happen and will happen to someone. I'm sorry, Marina, I'm in HR also, and it's really it depends. Again, I have my own thing, but really it's what do you do at your organization? What can you do? Have you thought about it? That's part of the practicing preventative paranoia. You got to think about this stuff. So what happens if someone has all of our files? We have to prevent that. That's true. But what happens if that happens? Then you have a plan in place. And that way you're not panicking, thinking, oh boy, well, someone has our files. Like, well, okay, we have a plan in place that we've established. this is what we're going to do. So Maureen, I'm sorry, I tried to answer your question, but I don't think I answered your question exactly, because there is no magic bullet. As I said before, there is no magic bullet.
You know, Maurice, you said something about assessing the staff. And, you know, it gave me an idea that I don't know how many libraries actually see. Every person accesses their files and their email in a totally different way, you know?
Aha.
And I'm wondering if there's something that could be done internally in a library or an organization where you have your IT person watching your pathway and then
Right.
seeing how to change those paths, you know?
So here's an answer to the underfunded. Thank you, Kevin, for that thing. It's always good to have an IT person in here. It's like, so 5.4 million to 17 million. It's cheaper. It is cheaper. It is cheaper. It is cheaper to prevent than to fix. No matter what, it is cheaper. It is cheaper to prevent than to fix. That is a lot of scratch to put out. Now, Suffolk County, it has some cash. As y'all in New York, Suffolk County does have some resources and money, but they really want to spend, that's what, $20 million for something that may have been possibly been preventable. That's a lot. And their reputation. All right, I'm going to be mindful, folks, it's 3:49. I want to be mindful of 4 o'clock hours. So if I'm going to try to get through everything at 4 o'clock, it is going to be recorded. If you have to leave at 4, I'm going to go on and try to make sure that everything at least is in the recording. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So next is, and it's great conversation. This is that slide. This is an iceberg. This is a huge iceberg. It's a lot. So let's talk about protecting access, and maybe this will answer some of those. What are some of the basics to do? So we're going to practice preventative, proactive paranoia. All right, here are some best practices. Make sure you separate your staff and your public networks. Create 2 or more networks for separate public traffic from staff traffic and staff network access. Do not share networks with the public, even if you have a single little tiny home router. You can create 2 different networks using the same physical equipment. Create a visible public network and then create a staff Wi-Fi network that's password protected and hidden from view. Also, again, hide your staff network. Do not broadcast the ID of that network. It shouldn't be public knowledge. Also, the same goes for any Internet of Things that the library has that connect to things. Those shouldn't be public devices or smart device networks you have in your library. Also, disable listening features on the smart listening features on any equipment like your TV, or if you happen to have them as a thing at your library, the Google, Amazon, or Apple home devices. Okay, make sure you disable the smart listening features. Manage your networks. Test your network access times. Maybe someone's on there that you don't expect. To make sure you know what users are on your network. If you have a user that's somehow a double network, wait a minute, why is this person? Test your access times. Where are your customers going? Are they playing online games or streaming to slow your data speeds? You can speed test and load balancing. Also, managing your access. Okay. Audit account privileges. Who is able to do what, when, and where? Know who has access to what's on your system. Also, encourage, seriously require strong passwords and recommend a password manager to staff. And I'll talk a little bit about that more when I talk about staff in the public. But make sure that a password manager, they are not perfect, but they're better than browser password managers and help folks remember complex passwords. Enable multi-factor authentication. You know how you have to get a text to access your fill-in-the-blank account from an unknown computer? That's multi-factor authentication. You can use an authenticator app. You can use a text messaging thing. All these different security measures should be in place for anyone who's logging onto your system to make sure that person is that confirm that person. Some use an authenticator like Microsoft Authenticator or Authy. Some have physically a key that generates a code every time, etc. Whatever it is, make sure that there's more than just a username and a password access to someone. And be informed. Right? Stay on top of the latest cybersecurity news. Look at your local paper. Look at other papers. Talk to your fellow IT folks. What do they use to keep up with things? Who do they talk to? Who do they follow on social media to do things? All right, stay on top of local cybersecurity news. Your local IT networks will have newsletter and social media resources to follow. Okay. All right. In the chat, Steve talks about don't open suspicious emails. Absolutely. Always be a skeptic. Always be a skeptic. Always be a skeptic. And there is KnowBe4. If you have access to KnowBe4, they have really good basic tutorials on how to deal with these things on cybersecurity, etc. Any knowledge is going to be better than no knowledge. All right, to protect your staff. All right, remember the keywords: practice, preventative, proactive, paranoia. The best practices. Again, if you were asleep before, I talked about multi-factor authentication. They have multi-factor authentication for your staff. If you have a mail server, install or use a mail programmer server, spam or malware filter. You can get plugins that work to identify and whack spam, whack malware coming from outside, or to have something that automatically attaches the word external. I'm sure you've seen those from agencies, that an email that comes from outside the agency will say external on it. That way you know it's from outside your circle of trust, as it were. So again, your program should have a rudimentary junk spam filter. Use it. Work with IT, maybe to install a whole separate spam filter, a whole separate program that you use for your entire library, or something that you use for your county government, whatever it is. Can you make staff think about those external messages differently than those internal messages? Back to strong passwords. Force staff to change strong passwords regularly. That is a combination of upper lowercase letters, numbers, and the special characters. Tell staff they really have to avoid using personal information such as your name, your birth date, and your password, and aim for a minimum length of 8 characters. Avoid reusing passwords. It's crucial to use a different password for each of your online accounts. Using passwords across multiple accounts makes it easy for hackers to access your sensitive information if one account is compromised. For example, there's a link to a site called Have I Been Pwned that will tell you if your email and password stuff has been exposed in a data breach. Change passwords regularly, sort of like underwear, no, early and often. Make sure you change them, have a set thing. If you're in IT, say, all right, we're going to change our passwords every X amount of days. Some places 190, some places 120, some places 180. And still have multi-factor authentication that helps prevent unauthorized access to your account using an old password. All right, LastPass. So we're going to talk about LastPass in a minute, Anna. You probably want to get off of LastPass. This is the time it takes for a hacker to brute force your password. If you have even 10 characters or numbers, it's 10 numbers. That's 10 by 10 by 10 by 10. It's pretty much instantaneously going to break your stuff. If you have 6 characters that have number, lowercase, and letters, it's a little slower, 1 second. If you have numbers, upper, lowercase, letters, and symbols, and you have 6 characters, it takes only 5 seconds. So the longer, more complex your password, you can use a passphrase, you can use a whole combination, a string of things, the more time it would take for someone to crack your password, the less likely chance they're even going to try to crack your password. That question, Janet. I will answer that. I will park that for a minute, because that's a tough question. That really is. Let's talk about teaching staff to be skeptical and suspicious. Someone mentioned don't click on stuff. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. make sure that you know what you're opening before you open it. Make sure that person really sent you that really cute cat video. Set any attachments to open in a safe mode if you can through your email program, or whack them completely. Any email that asks for any personal information should be confirmed with a phone call. So teach your staff to be skeptical and suspicious. Teach and require your staff to use better browsers and privacy extensions. So HTTPS everywhere throws up a thing that's a secure server. Privacy Badger, AdGuard, DuckDuckGo, Brave, and Tor. If you're really serious about your privacy, you can use Tor. Teach staff and require the staff to use virtual private networks whenever they are trying to access something remotely. You can limit your access remotely also using various programs, but one way to make sure that it's somewhat safe is to use VPNs or cloud-based solution for your file management, etc. Require computer lockout. This is what I mean by physical security. When the staff leave the staff computer in public space, they should lock the computer. If they don't lock the computer, it takes, I don't know, no time for someone to stick a USB in, throw a quick little Trojan in, and that's it, they're in your system. Done, over, under, done, you're $20 million in the hole. That way, someone can't distract a staff person and have a companion bad actor gain access to your network. And also lock your phones if they have access to the network or email on it. These are all things for your staff, because that could also be a way a bad actor get their hands on passwords, which can lead to other passwords or malware being stored in your network without login, which is why use a form of MFA or some sort of key. Okay, this is a little songs. Short answer, I am cosplay as a comic character from Not Invented Here. It's a comic in the 2010s. And it's really about imploring you to give some two-factor security, protect your laptop from impurity. That's really what you want to do. All right, questions. And can we protect children using the library's computers? If you don't have filters on your computers, then I would suggest your IT do something very serious. Put on the public access computers. No, most kids aren't I'm sorry, a lot of kids, many kids aren't necessarily hopping on there without their parent. If the kid can get to it, there's always workarounds to things. There's no magic bullet. But if it's part of your internet policy that someone in the public has to agree to every time they open the computer, do not go to these websites. We will try to block access to these things. Now, that's a different question that you don't have filters on your computers. That's a different question. That's a question for your library administration. Why don't you? You could have a basic filter and then have some sort of password that allows people to get to whatever they want to get to if you want unfettered access. There's also, you have to watch out for local, state, and national ordinances on what kids can see on the internet. So make sure you're in compliance with all those things. Really, honestly, Janet, it is up to the parent to modify and watch what the kid is watching, if they want to do that. If they don't care, they don't care. Yeah, if a parent doesn't want a kid to read book X, that's up to the parent. But that doesn't mean my kid can't read book X. Okay. I know it's not a perfect answer. I have my own opinion. I don't have a perfect answer. That is something that you have to work out with your, well, if the child's in the library alone, well, that they're okay with their kid looking at whatever. I mean, that's on the parent. Okay. In my opinion, that is on the parent. The parent obviously trusts their child and trusts their judgment. I was a latchkey kid. I get that, but that's their understanding. Now, if your library is okay with that, then your library is okay with it, but you have to talk about it. Bringing it up is awesome. Yes, Janet, you should bring that to the library. What happens if something happens? That is being proactive and paranoid. What happens if a parent comes back and says, I didn't want my kid to look at that website about that group? What is your library response? Okay. If the parents are in the library, they're okay with their kid being in the library. I know kids come there afterwards, etc. I'm looking back in the chat at some things. I will cover some of those or answer some of those a little later. I want to finish. I just have one more set of things to protecting the customers, if you allow me. I'm sorry again, folks, that I went over. I really apologize, but I think this has been a rich conversation that was worth going a couple of minutes over.
I think we'll forgive you.
All right, thank you. All right, protect customers. All right, remember to practice preventative, proactive paranoia. Some best practices. Implore customers to be skeptical and suspicious about things. Again, if something is too good to be true, it probably is. Tell them don't put your personal information anywhere. Again, if it's digital, it's findable, it's shareable, and can be manipulated. Teach them to read the terms of service on things, or just accept your data is going to be used and exploited, so give them as little real data as possible. I personally have a fake birthday I use on social media sites. I have no reason to share my birthday with Facebook. Not at all. I don't need people saying, hey, happy birthday. It's like, haha, not my birthday. I don't even broadcast my birthday in Facebook. So that's example. Give them as real little data as possible. Encourage people to give them as real little data as possible. Also teach customers to lock their phones. If you have anything personal on your phone, you should have a screen lock or a passcode or a facial recognition or a fingerprint to unlock your feature. Now, as a person of color, I can tell you that facial recognition is, shall we say, problematic. So I have a passcode. Not saying that all facial recognition features are problematic, but kind of some are. Encourage your customers to use the better browsers and privacy extensions. Use all these things if they really want to keep their stuff safe on their own personal computers and their home computers. Tell them you would recommend paying for a virtual private network. Most free VPNs are really just honey traps to get your information. Proton VPN is not a honey trap. That's the only free one that is usually recommended by multiple online reviewers. And I use Proton VPN when I need to use a VPN from my computer. It's free and it's pretty good. And usually it puts me it thinks I'm in the Netherlands. So it kind of hides where I am. Teach customers to lock your computer, especially when they walk away from it if you were in a public setting. Now, it's hard if you don't have some sort of program on there, some sort of access manager program / print manager program. If it's just a straight up regular computer that you have your customers use, there's no other sort of shell over it that they use their cards to access, that might be a little harder, but really tell them to lock their computer with a password or something. Or teach them good habits. If it's their own personal computer and they walk away, A, don't ever walk away from it. B, lock it up if you're going to walk away. If you're, quote unquote, watching their computer for a second while they use the restroom, lock the computer. You don't want to have access to stuff. You don't want anyone to maybe have access to their stuff. As in protecting your customers, clean up your PCs after your customers. These are a couple programs called Smart Shield and Deep Freeze. Talk to your IT about how you can make this happen if you want to make it happen, if it's part of your prevention. When customers walk away from the computer and end their session, these programs will restore a clean image of your choosing to the PC and wipe away any malware or other things you don't want on your computer. Also, periodically physically check for keyloggers, small USBs that you didn't put there on your public and staff computers if there's poor physical security. The keyloggers are very simple. They simply record all your keystrokes, so they don't have to ask for anything, you give it to them. So make sure there's no weird stuff in the back of your computer. Look around, feel, etc. Very similar to if you're at some place that has a credit card reader, make sure you feel around and see if there's a skimmer on it that's going to skim your credit information. All right, last and not least, for everyone you're dealing with, no one likes change and no one likes things the way they are. So just remember that there is no shortcut to success. These are 3 library policy, digital legacy, and privacy field guides. These are things available from ALA. There's also a bunch of resources on my sheet. And let's do this. Let's say thank you. And this is how to get in contact with me. I'm going to go back and look through the chat. And Janet, I apologize if I didn't answer that question fully, But that is a way more complex question. I can't answer that question responsibly because that depends on all of your stuff at your library. What are your library's policies? What are your county policies? What are things specific to your county in New York State or statewide about children looking at stuff? Is your library protected? That's a lawyer question. I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend to play one on TV or anything else. Let's see, Steve says, don't open suspicious emails if they have attachments and say things like there's a problem with your package. Exactly. Be a skeptic. Be a skeptic. Download the attachment can lead the virus is such a Loki, which can hold people hostage, etc. You don't know what can happen if you click on that thing. Maureen talks about a policy regarding staff using personal devices on network, i.e. flash drive or smartphone. A past company prohibited this, no inserting a personal flash drive or cell phone into a computer to safeguard the network. This is a recommended practice. It depends. So part of the multi-factor authentication is probably people have to use their personal cell phones. If that is part of your policy, you're taking a, not necessarily a risk because they may not directly accessing your network. For example, my library, I use Outlook on my phone. It just accessing the server, but it asks me for who I am every single time. And it's a version. It's not, I don't have access to my network files. I have access to my OneDrive files. That's just as similar as having access to a Google Drive files. So it depends. If you want people to do multi-factor authentication, you don't want them to use a cell phone, you can provide the key or some other methodology to confirm who they are. Okay. Use LastPass. Yeah, leave LastPass because so LastPass had a ginormous breach, including the key passwords that you saved. I personally recommend one password or Bitwarden. We talked to a lot of after school kids who walk to the library, no parents in the building with them. You know, again, the parents are, there's some personal responsibility. If you want your kid to go to the library, that's great. The library is a safe space. I hope your library has some stuff in place to maybe prevent children from going to sites they shouldn't see. But if your library doesn't, they're choosing to take that risk. I would have, if you can, have a substantive conversation about it. What does it mean for that? That goes back to Janet's thing. What does it mean to take that substantive risk for the library? What could happen to us? Charlotte, that's a good thing. Require parents to sign a form that allows the children on the internet to take responsibility for the child. Yes, but you know, the kids coming there and they just want to play Minecraft. You know what? That's a lot of paperwork. Maybe that's what you have to do, but that's a lot of paperwork. And you have deep freeze, awesome. All right, don't filter ALA Bill of Rights, policies explained to the parent. Yep, but again, what if the parent complains? That's something you have to take with your IT, your board, etc. Have a plan in place in case a parent complains. These are the ALA Bill of Rights. We want people to have full unhindered access to the internet, etc. It is up to you as a consumer to help regulate your child's use of the internet. Have some sort of pattern or something in case it happens. Have something that's approved by your library biggywigs.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you very much, Maurice. I just have one other question. Hopefully it will be a short answer. I'm going to admit that I personally have never heard of the term test and patch.
Yes. So patching is when you do the updates to your things, that you're patching. That's patching. What I mean testing in terms of, this is a little nerdy IT, is test your stuff, test access, test everything about your network, test all your stuff. If you know someone who's a white hat hacker, pay a security firm. Maybe you pay them some money to go in and test how to if they can hack into your library. It's a stress test. You know, so back when they were doing the, I'm sorry, I'm cycling. I'm trying to get back to that slide. Don't mind me. I'm trying not to make everyone seasick. But it's test and patch constantly, right? Test your network. know what's going on in your network, test it for vulnerabilities. There are also things you can do. Test outside, etc. Test your access. Make sure you patch everything. That's what I mean. It's testing and patching. What you're trying to do is optimize the network itself. You want to make sure it's always up to date. That way you're doing these little things to prevent big bad things from happening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, well, there you go, Janet. You have a formal complaint policy in place. Well, there you go. So I'm assuming, Janet, you also have some sort of pattern or standard answer if I'm a parent and my kid goes to a site that I don't want my kid to go to and I wasn't there, I'm sure you have some sort of pattern that says, this is what happened. We assume the responsibility is on the parent to monitor what the child is. That is not our job. Our job is to provide the unfettered access to information, to factual information, however you want to say it. I'm assuming you have something like that, yes? All right, for those who are watching the recording at this point, I'm going to fast forward back to the contact slide. This is your speed reading the entire presentation. There we go. All right, and we are almost at the end. Thank you for riding Bald Geek Airways. All right, so providing a patron code of contact as well as the children. There you go. So you do. So you've sort of thought about the worry, I guess, a little bit, Janet. This is my contact information. Anyone else have any questions? Am I missing something from the Q&A? I think I answered that. And that from the Q&A.
I think we are good.
All right.
I am going to put my video. Oh, I'm still here.
All right, I'm going to stop the share. All right, so
Okay,
there we go.
hop back on.
I'm going to hop back with my face. Hi. There's so many. Thank you very much, Kevin and Kathy. There's so many things. This really, as I mentioned, this is truly the tip of the iceberg. I can get deep. I know friends who can get deep in these things. There's a lot. Look, even like one of those sections could be an entire hour-long webinar about things. This is to give you some language and some tools in order to help your library understand. Really, be paranoid and proactive. Discuss what happens if. Just what happens if. What if the poo hits the fan? Okay, how do we deal with that? Are you prepared for that? And that person who said that they don't have enough money, again, as Kevin and other people have said, it costs way more to repair than to prevent it. Way more money and reputation, and your library shut down. If you have a problem selling that, say, all right, imagine if we shut the library for 3 weeks. What would happen to us? Well, we would never shut the library. If you have a ransomware attack and you're rebuilding your network and all your public PCs and stuff, you're lucky if you can get up and running in 3 weeks. If you don't have a plan, you got to scramble, you got to get your stuff, you got to figure out, do I have a backup? What's the latest backup I have, etc. You're lucky if it'll be 3 weeks. What happens?
And not only that, but public opinion.
Yes.
I can't trust my library
Ding,
anymore.
ding, ding. That costs
Right.
money too. Because not only is it the public opinion, but depending on how your library is funded, that can impact your funding.
Right.
So you don't want that. You just don't want, you don't want that jelly. You just don't want that jelly. It's so much cheaper. I also teach people about tech management, and very important, it's cheaper to keep them. It's always cheaper to keep someone if in a job, as opposed to, oh, we'll just fire that person. It's cheaper to keep them because it costs so much to recruit and train someone. If you really think about it, it's cheaper to keep someone, work with them, etc., until it comes to a point where it's completely untenable. But it's cheaper to keep someone.
And more than likely, they're working for a lower wage than a new person.
Right. Exactly.
All right, guys. No other follow-up questions for Maurice. I think we'll just say a huge thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will be sending out that slide pack, the information links, and the recording in a couple days.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna, for your hosting.
Thank you.
And yeah, we could spend all afternoon and stuff, but again, reach out to me, y'all, if you get this and you need to talk to you about stuff. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot. Thanks,
All right.
Maurice.
All right, and I'll get
Bye,
you.
everybody. Have a good
Bye.
afternoon.